Vertical Raise is the premier online donation platform, utilizing email, text messaging, and social media campaigns to exponentially increase the reach of your fundraiser. With detailed tracking and the complete personalization of every page, Vertical Raise provides an easy system that works. Our experienced representatives have made us the most effective fundraising platform available. We look forward to the opportunity in helping elevate your program to the next level and reaching your goals. Visit online or call today.
This is a Queen Bee Radio High School sports presentation.
Welcome to another edition of the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup, presented by Vertical Raise Milwaukee. We got some awesome stuff coming up on this week's episode, including a one-on-one with a great one interview with Jordon Rolland, the head coach of the Lancaster Flying Arrows football team, our Subs.com highlight reel, and we're going to preview our football coverage with the Level 1 playoffs coming up. We're going to open up this week's episode with high school volleyball. Going to change things up a little bit because it is a very busy week in postseason volleyball. We've already covered the regional quarterfinals on Tuesday night, and I'm joined by Steve Prestegard, who helped call some of the action on Tuesday night. He had Platteville as they defeated Beloit Turner on Tuesday night, 3-1 in Division II. Other matchups in Division II that happened on Tuesday night: Dodgeville beat Monroe 3-0, and Stoughton beat Whitewater 3-0. The number 1 seed McFarland had a bye. That is who Platteville will play on a Thursday night on ESPN Radio, AM 1590 WPVL. And then Stoughton travels to Dodgeville for a matchup in Division II. And Steve, seemed like a very fun match on Tuesday night. Platteville coming away with the 3-1 win. Your impression of Platteville after their first postseason win?
Well, this is not the way to advance in the postseason, even though Platteville obviously won. They came out extremely tentative in the first set and also very inaccurate in hitting. And they got better after the first set. But they still had accuracy problems and hitting a lot of balls that ended up way out. And the fourth set turned out to be the key. It was tied at 21, and then Platteville ended up scoring the last 4 points. Interestingly, I think it was Ava Richard getting all 4 kills there. But if that match goes to 5 sets, I don't think we're talking about Platteville going on in the playoffs. So I suppose you could attribute it to rust or just nervousness or something like that from starting the playoffs, because Platteville was not having injury issues. They had everybody that they wanted there. So I'm not quite sure what it was, but they will absolutely have to up their game, so to speak, if they are to win against a team that is ranked 5th in Division II on Thursday. And, if you look at this bracket, it is somewhat the regional of death, or half sectional of death, possibly, because anybody who gets a Badger small team, there's only one team in the Badger small conference that doesn't have a winning season. And, Reedsburg's 19-16, but everybody else has more than 20 wins. And one team, Sauk Prairie, and actually McFarland also, they have 30 wins each. So there might be a lot of local teams going away possibly Thursday night, just because they, the way that the sectional is set up, they have a very robust sectional or half sectional that they have to play in when they're playing teams out of the Badger small conference.
Yeah, it should be very intriguing how that shapes up in Division II. Again, Platteville will take on McFarland on a Thursday night. We'll have that one on ESPN Radio, AM 1590 WPVL. Let's recap what we saw in Division III, and really, kind of the theme, for me, Steve, in, Divisions 3 and 4 is that the seedings pretty much held serve. There were no, major upsets or anything like that. There were, a couple competitive matches, and in Division III, Mineral Point, the 1 seed, knocked off Iowa Grant 3-1. Lancaster swept Parkview 3-0. New Glarus beat Deerfield 3-0. Darlington swept Riverdale. Broadhead beat Cambridge 3-0. Belleville beat Wisconsin Heights 3-1. The match that we had on 97.7 Country WGLR Tuesday night, Fenimore beat Basketball 3-2, which seemed eerily similar to the match that I had in Division 4, which we'll get to in a little bit. And then Cuba City did beat Prairie du Chien 3-0, although our colleague RJ Osterhaus had reached out to Carrie Lawson, because on the WIAA website, it said that Prairie du Chien had won 3-0, and Carrie Lawson's phone was kind of ringing and kind of wondering, is everything okay in Cuba City? So that was thankfully corrected, but that sets up our Thursday slate with Lancaster at Mineral Point. That'll be on 97.7 Country WGLR. The winner of that match takes on the winner of New Glarus at Darlington. Broadhead travels to Belleville. And then our other matchup in Division 3 on Queen Bee Radio, Fenimore will be at Cuba City on Super Hits 106 and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Again, as I said, Steve, I don't think anything really surprising as far as the results in Division 3. Just a really fun matchup between Fenimore and Basketball, but things starting to take shape a little bit more, and some potential interesting matchups along the way coming up here soon.
Well, there's, I think, one way also to tell whether or not a match, once it gets to this level, is going to be competitive. There is an opportunity for teams that have played Tuesday to maybe get a shot in early on Thursday against a team like McFarland, for instance, that didn't play. Now, I don't think that was not the case in Division 3 at all. But sometimes what happens is that week off is not necessarily what a coach wants to have. And so, maybe there's a possibility there, but you don't look at any, certainly a 5-4 matchup figures to be a good matchup. But there's nothing there that looks like, well, this might be an upset special. Kind of not really the case in Division 3, I think.
Yep. And moving on to Division 4, the number 1 seed Barneveld had a bye. And in the 8-9 matchup, Argyle swept Monticello 3-0. Pecatonica survived Potosi 3-2. Potosi nearly coming away with the 5-12 upset, but Pecatonica able to get past them. Shullsburg beat Blackhawk 3-2. Southwestern beat Cassville 3-0. Albany beat Benton 3-0. Belmont beat River Ridge, a matchup that I had, and the reason I had a very raspy voice this morning, beat River Ridge 3-2, and then Highland took care of Judah easily 3-0. That sets up the Thursday slate with Argyle at Barneveld, and they will take on the winner of Pecatonica at Shullsburg. And in the bottom half of the bracket, Albany will be at Southwestern, and then the matchup that we'll have on Extreme 107.1 and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel, Belmont at Highland. Again, seeds holding serve, and I can tell you the Belmont River Ridge match, what a back and forth match it was. I think the largest lead for either team was 5, maybe 6 points at given points, but there was no room for error between these two programs. River Ridge was getting healthier as the season came to an end, but Belmont just had a ton of momentum. They came off a big win against Highland, a match that you called about a week ago, Steve. And yeah, Belmont and Highland on a collision course again, this time at Highland, with the stakes even higher. Instead of conference seedings, is to keep your season alive.
That's right. And, you've heard the phrase, familiarity breeds contempt. I don't think these two teams have contempt for each other, but, there's nothing Belmont's going to do that's going to surprise Highland, and vice versa. Those cases where you're playing a team 3 times in a season, there's a phrase for that, that it's difficult to beat a team 3 times in a season. It's obvious why that is, because you're not going to do anything that particularly surprises the other team. I think this is also, once again, Belmont wants to get out to a lead early. I'm positive of that. They were, the last time these two teams played a week and change ago, Belmont played the best match, I'm pretty sure, that they have played all season. And that kind of, wasn't the case with Highland. Highland had a replacement at libero for the game, and just kind of looked discombobulated. And also, very inaccurate in hitting. They had some tremendous kills, but they didn't have very many tremendous kills. And Belmont, certainly you would think it would be possible for Belmont to beat Highland, but not in 3 sets. But that's what happened. Now, I think everybody's back to where they're supposed to be for Thursday's match. But Belmont obviously is not going to go to Highland and think we have no shot here. So that to me looks like pretty clearly the match of the night in the area, possibly.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think one of the interesting things that Maria Wineski mentioned in our one-on-one of the Great One interview in last Saturday's episode of our show, she had mentioned that Highland was without Lily Mitchick, their libero, who was a key part in that back row for the Cardinals. And kind of looking back on that match that you had, Steve, like Highland just did not look good. To be honest, they couldn't pass the ball very, very well. They just seemed all out of sorts. And it seems like Lily Mitchick is probably that one player that kind of keeps things going and, does a lot of the control on when the ball is on their side of the net, and having her back, I would imagine, going to be a key thing for Highland heading into this match, and could be the deciding factor between these two teams.
Well, the libero position is relatively new in volleyball. It's I'm not quite sure when it began, but it hasn't been around all that long. But all you have to do is look at the libero stats. That they're number one in serve receives on the team. They're frequently number one or very close to it in digs, and typically they're kind of the backup setter also in the back row. If for whatever reason the setter ends up hitting the ball first and you have an errant hit, you actually see a fair number of assist opportunities for liberos. So yeah, it is an absolutely important position. I'm thinking of, for instance, the 2014 Platteville team that went to state in volleyball, and Brad Updike was their libero, and I think she hit every serve receive. It wasn't close. She was always hitting the ball first. She was always diving for it, and I think I said after a broadcast once that she needed to go find an ice bath because she had to have bruises all over after the match that she played. So yeah, libero is an incredibly important position. It used to be that the setter was probably the most important position, but it's kind of real close 1-2 versus the libero and the setter, the way that the game has evolved over the years. And so yeah, if you bring somebody in and they've never played the position before or never played it in a big match, which that obviously was, you are going to have problems. I think that was some of it, but the other players for Highland kind of didn't step up their games after that either. You kind of sort of need to realize that you might get some errant bumps from the back row, and you have to adjust to that, move better, for instance, the set of that sort of thing. And that didn't happen. And the other thing is, Belmont really deserved a lot of credit. They just came out on fire. That was a fundraiser for Sydney Fecht, of course, the Potosi graduate who's battling brain cancer. And they just came out really, really amped for the game, and that's exactly how they played.
Yep, Belmont on a hot streak heading into the postseason. Highland looking the part as the 2 seed, taking care of Judah on Tuesday night. So to recap the matches that we will have on Thursday night: Platteville at McFarland in Division 2 on ESPN Radio AM 1590 WPVL. In Division 3, Lancaster at Mineral Point on 97.7 Country WGLR. Fenimore at Cuba City on Super Hits 106 and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. And then in Division 4, Belmont at Highland on Extreme 107.1 and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Of course, we will follow the winners of these matches into the regional finals on Saturday. All the local teams, I should say, should they all advance. And we'll sort out our coverage for that after Thursday night's results. You can check out the Queen Bee Radio Sports schedule at AM1590 WPVL.com. Thank you, Steve, for chatting about our volleyball coverage and the postseason that we have coming up for volleyball on Queen Bee Radio. Coming up after this, we will have the playoff preview for high school football in Level 1, as well as a recap of what we saw in Week 9. Our Subs.com highlight reel and our one-on-one with a great one interview with Jordon Rolland of the Lancaster Flying Arrows. The Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup continues after this on YouTube and SoundCloud.
Check out Subs.com. Subs is Southwest Wisconsin's go-to supplement store. Find all your favorite supplement brands at the best prices from local people. Fuel your fitness journey. Subs.com, your go-to supplement store with locations in Fenimore and Dubuque.
This week's highlight reel is presented by Subs.com. Wide receiver to each side of the formation. It's Taylor Williams to the right, Samaji Benson to the left side. Now Alvarado gets it back, bounces it left, gets inside the 10, looking towards the end zone. And he is in for a Northland Buildings touchdown. Taylor Williams, the lone receiver to the left side. Quentin Plessel to the right. And they're going to do a rainbow pass fade towards the near sideline. It is caught for a Northland Buildings touchdown. Number 4, Quentin Plessel on the touchdown reception. 4th receiving touchdown on the season, and Lancaster extends their lead 14-0 with 18 seconds to go in the first quarter. Logan Wolf a wing back to the right side, and now Wolf is rolling right, looking for someone to pass to, finds Benson in the end zone. Touchdown Lancaster, a Northland Buildings touchdown to push the lead to 22-0 with 8 seconds to go until halftime. What a drive and what a way to end the first half for the Flying Arrow offense. Taylor Williams to the right side of the formation. Alvarado back in the fullback spot. And they're going to go with a quick pass near side for Benson. Benson gets some blockers, tiptoes the sideline. He is in for a Northland Buildings touchdown. And 8.
Burley takes the snap. He's going to run the option. 15-yard line. Straddles the sideline. He's to the 10-5. Touchdown. Mineral Point Pointers. Burley on an 18-yard touchdown run. And that touchdown brought to you by Northland Buildings. Workman for Mineral Point ran it back 75 yards for a touchdown. Here's the pass over to the far side of the field, and it's almost interception. In fact, it is. It is intercepted by the Pointers.
Luke Filardo with great coverage on that interception. Richard had a guy deep down the right sideline and opted to go with the underneath route, and Filardo was able to read it and pick it up. Really big turnover for the Pointers defense.
Great field position indeed, because they're in the green zone. Brought to you by High Tech Resource Management. Back to pass. Here's a fade route to the end zone. The pass is touchdown, Humans.
Boston that time for the CD reception.
Number 20, Gavin Vossen with the catch. And it goes down to the 17-yard reception. 3rd and 1 from the 29-yard line. Spurley back to pass. Looks, throws downfield, and the pass is intercepted.
Intercepted. Lincoln Rogers on the interception that time.
Under 8 minutes to play, 3rd quarter. 7-7, Point and Cuba. Burley stays in the pistol formation, double wide left and right. Burley takes it, got a little bit of a seam to his left, he's into the end zone. Touchdown, Mineral Point. 3-yard touchdown run by Gibson Spurley. And the Pointers go out in front, 13-7.
And serving for the Timberwolves will be Shayna Graff, takes a couple dribbles in the middle of the end line, and she sends it over. We're underway here in Belmont on Extreme 107.1 of the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. River Ridge is going to punch it back over on the 3rd hit. Belmont plays it, middle hitter position. Now an attack near side, bumped back over by River Ridge, and now a setup in the middle for Belmont. They punch it over from the right side, bumped up to the front row for River Ridge. The Wolves go on the attack, and the ball gets into the net as number 6, Annie McNett, kind of caught out of position a little bit, hits it into the net, and River Ridge has the first point of the match. Coming out of the River Ridge timeout, it's Belmont serve 23, serving 24, set point. As the serve just barely clears the net, and Shayna Graff pushes it over for the 3rd hit for River Ridge. Belmont sets it up in the middle, now going on the attack on the far side. Great block by Goki, and now Belmont going to play it again. They send it over, and now River Ridge is going to play it in the middle. Set up for Graff. And Ruddy able to pop it up in the back row for the Braves, as Morgan Freeman sends it over on a backwards bump for the 3rd hit. Here's the attack in the middle, 50-50 ball at the net, and Belmont gets the point. Callie Hodgson with the kill and the block. We are tied at 24 apiece. 25 serving 24. Set point for Belmont. Standing serve in the back row middle. Drone pops it up. Zinkel chases it out of bounds, and River Ridge able to send it over on the third hit. Here's a set in the middle. As Zinkel plays it, and Belmont gets the point, as there's a net violation called against River Ridge. Belmont takes a thrilling set one, 26-24. What a set. 23 serving 21. Can River Ridge close this set out? They were in a similar spot back in set number one, as Graf's serve is dug up by Rundy, and Belmont able to just barely get it over on the third hit. Here's the attack on the near side. Rundy digs it up in the back row. Now a set for Freeman. Freeman taps it over with two hands. Now here's a setup by Krubel for Zinkel. And what a block and a kill for Christensen. Wow, what a block and kill for Christensen. Belmont will serve 22 serving 23. And now it's set point with Josie Drone serving for River Ridge. Standing serve sent over with the right hand. Fritz digs it up for Belmont. Now Rundy gonna tap it over, and it clears the near sideline, and River Ridge takes set number two, 25-23. Set point for the Braves, 24 serving 20, trying to go up 2-1 in this regional quarterfinal. Serve is a liner played in the back row, and now Drone goes on the attack. Great block by Belmont. Another 50-50 ball as Graf goes on the attack again. Dug up in the back row. Graf reloads. And Belmont somehow able to keep it alive. They set it up for Graf again, and Graf hits it into the net, and Belmont takes the third set, 25-20. The Wolves 1 point away from making this even 2-2. Here's the serve by number 7, Josie Drone. Popped up by Belmont along the front row, pushed over for the third hit. River Ridge in control of it. Here's Zinkel in the middle, gets it down! River Ridge takes the fourth set, 26-24. Callie Hodgson will serve. Running jump serve in the middle. Graf pushes it forward to Krubel. Set back up. Set back over. Morgan Freeman pops it up, and now River Ridge with it on their side. Here's Goki at the net, goes into the net, and the Belmont Braves defeat River Ridge 15-6 in the fifth and decisive set. What a match here at Belmont High School.
Grow your business by enhancing your digital marketing efforts with Queen Bee Radio and Phase 3 Digital. We provide customized solutions based on your business's unique needs, including targeted advertising, website development, and search engine optimization. Contact us at 608-349-2000 or visit p3da.com/Platteville to learn more.
Back on the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup, presented by Vertical Rays Milwaukee. It's time to recap what we saw in Week 9, as well as talk about the bracket reveal. Steve Ressigard and I had our little soapbox over the weekend to talk about the brackets and the matchups after the brackets were released on Saturday. But we'll give the floor to Scott, Tom, and Wally. And we'll start off with you, Scott. Your reactions to the brackets that came out on Saturday, and maybe some of the matchups or themes that you're looking forward to as we head towards the Level 1 playoff.
Well, looking at the brackets, there were a couple of surprises. I'll start with D7. The one surprise from our area was Highland and River Ridge. Highland wins the conference, and they get the 5th seed, and River Ridge, who finishes, I think, second or third in the Six Rivers, ends up in 4th seed. So that kind of really surprised me a little bit there. The split between Lodi and Platteville, that really helps Platteville a little bit. I know they're in a tough bracket if they get into level 4. But it's a situation where I go back the year that we went to state in Belmont. We stayed and went up the river instead of going east like the last couple of years, which kind of helped us a little bit. Other than that, the brackets seem to work out to some of our advantage in this area. The one team that I thought probably would get in didn't was Richland Center, who ended up having 3 wins in their conference, but they didn't make it in. So that's what I look at. I mean, there's a lot of good games coming up in the second round. The first round's always a little iffy, but the second round would be some pretty good games. Platteville, they got Jefferson this week, but Evansville or Lakeside Lutheran, and then Highland and River Ridge, they'll take on either Hillsborough or Potosi. So, some rematches that were pretty exciting games during the year. So that's my take.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, Richland Center was kind of an interesting thing just because they blew out Dodgeville in the final week of the season to really help their cause. And, I could probably imagine that Richland Center was trying to get a very decisive win to show that they were capable of being in the playoff. And unfortunately, that didn't play into their favor. Tom Nisus, your reaction to the playoff field that was released on Saturday?
Well, it's, I have my gut reactions, but take what I say with a grain of salt. I haven't seen very many of these teams play. And to talk about the Capital Conference or something like that. I don't know what the quality of play is. It varies from year to year. But my first glance was I was excited Platteville got a 1 seed, but I'm not excited that Catholic Memorial is a 2 seed down at the bottom of that bracket. Corey Smith is coming back. It's an urban private school in a Division I conference. They have an awful lot of advantages against the more rural schools in that bracket, and I consider Platteville to be a rural school. So I didn't particularly like that. I guess Lodi is really good, and a lot of people think Lodi and Catholic Memorial will be for the state championship. We'll wait and see, but Platteville did earn that 1 seed. I guess I'll disagree a little bit with Scott. I'm not surprised at all that River Ridge got the seed over Highland. River Ridge beat them during the regular season. I believe the Six Rivers is a far stronger conference than the Ridge and Valley. You look at the scores, Highland was blown out by Potosi Cassville and by Blackhawk Warren. River Ridge played both of them tough. I'm not sure what the computer, drags into it, but I think logically, if I was doing the seeding, I would have given River Ridge the seed ahead of Highland. Doesn't look very good for the Ridge and Valley teams again. I see Johnson Creek, I think, plays Ithaca. I'm not sure they're going to survive round 1 this year. Lancaster's body of work, I thought, earned them at least a 2 seed rather than a 3 seed. If they do go to Kenosha St. Joe, I see the possibility of an upset. And then they get to Darlington in, I think it's level 3, which will be a heck of a game for our neck of the woods. The winner of that game, their reward is they probably get either Kewanee or St. Mary's Springs, which would be, I think, a level 4 game, which would be very difficult. I think it's a very difficult job. I hammer on the WIAA, a very difficult job to seed all these teams. And you got teams from rural areas, you got private schools, you got public schools, you got urban schools. Not everybody's going to be happy. We'll let the kids play it out on the field. That's the way it should be.
Yep, agreed. Wally, your reaction?
I agree with Division 7. I would have liked to have seen Highland with a higher seed, but it wasn't going to happen. I mean, they're the highest seed in the Ridge and Valley Conference. But then again, it's the Ridge and Valley Conference. And I'm sorry, guys, It's not a real good conference, and I that doesn't shock me really at all. As far as Ithaca, I just wonder how bad the score is going to be playing Johnson Creek. That's my only thing wondering about that. Blackhawk.
Tell us how you really feel, Wally.
Pardon?
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, tell me. Blackhawk Warren will have their hands full with Johnson Creek. Not going to say they can't beat them, but I think that could be a real interesting ball game. And of course, we know that I'm expecting Ridge to overcome Highland, just like Potosi Casville over Hillsborough, and that makes a fantastic second round game. Yeah, that's a game that anyone would like to be at to see play. But I agree with you when it comes in Division 7 in particular, it's really tough. I think the guys up in Pepin are the ones that are really excited because they got to face Cashton again, and Cashton is still loaded, and Pepin Alma is very good. So that's again, and I think if you go up above that, I don't know how good that bracket is above them, but I know that bracket's really good. Probably the strongest in over in that area. When I took a look at Division 6, I thought, really? So we're going to line up and we're going to make this the SWAL tournament, which is pretty much what it is. And I'm a little surprised that that's how that ended up being put together. I don't know how you do it. I mean, these are all teams that deserve to be in the playoffs, but they're all very good teams, and they all got to beat each other up again. I'm a little disappointed with the way that bracket turned out. I really am. I think it's going to be very interesting. Kenosha St. Joe is almost everything they may be billed to be. I mean, how many games have they won in the last, how many games have they lost in the last 3 years? 2. That's it.
Right.
St. Mary Springs beat them in level 4 2 years ago. And last year, I'm trying to think who beat them in level 4.
Darlington, right?
Darlington did.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting one. I do expect to see Kenosha St. Joe back up there, and probably Lancaster will have their hands full with them. But you know what? Kenosha St. Joe's has the same thing Lancaster has to a degree. They're big up front. It's just a matter of how can big up front play against big up front in that game. I think that'd be a heck of a ball game. But again, you look at Kenosha St. Joe and they just don't lose, except to way down the road a little bit. But again, just like you mentioned a little bit ago when you were talking about Catholic Memorial, a lot easier to recruit good players when you're in a big city. Then we come back up when I take a look at Division 5. No real surprises here at all to me. Brodhead Judah and Prairie du Chien end up and would be a second round game. I think it's kind of interesting they didn't somehow hook the other part of that together a little bit more with the other part of that bracket. You know, where you have New Glarus, Monticello, and Westby, and yet here you have Brodhead Judah in dealing with Columbus, and why couldn't, you know, and Prairie du Chien dealing with Clinton. And I look at the travel, gee, wouldn't it made more sense if they kind of New Glarus, well, maybe they're a conference, I don't know. But you know, you end up and you're going like this, and where you could have gone like this, you know, as far as travel. But I don't think the WIAA pays any attention to that. At least they say they do, but I don't think they do. And then I turned around and I took a look at Division 4. And again, Platteville, yes, I thought they earned the number 1 seed. I mean, how many teams went through a gauntlet like they went through and came through it unscathed pretty much? It's unfortunate they have to turn around and play the team that's probably is going to win Division 4 again. I think that'll be, 3-4 years in a row that Catholic Memorial will win Division 4. I mean, they're going to win it every year they're in this. There is absolutely no way any of these other Division 4 teams can beat them. Lodi's good. I know they're good. But at the same token, are they good? Are they that good? I mean, I don't know if they are. I mean, Platteville's a very, very good team. Are they that good? I don't know. We'll find that out. But that's kind of my thoughts about some of the brackets. And it's some of the things, the way the WIAA does things, that kind of bug me a little bit too. But it is what it is, and it's what it's going to be in the future, because they're not going to change.
Yeah, I was kind of curious with the computerized seating, how all that shakes out. And this is kind of true for basketball, having had conversations with Jerry Pettigrew and stuff like that, where, I do like the idea of having computerized seating as kind of a baseline for, where teams would line up, and then having some sort of, committee to go in and kind of move things around based on, travel and stuff like that to, kind of make up for some of the gaps that maybe the computer doesn't necessarily get. I mean, it's impossible to watch every single football game every single week and stuff like that. And I think the WIA, for the most part, does get things right. But there are, a couple instances where, there's some head scratchers and like, why are all of these teams loaded in one quadrant of the bracket? Why aren't things, kind of spread out, especially when geography kind of factors into it? But that's the way things are seeded for this postseason. We're looking forward to seeing how these paths shake out as the postseason rolls along. But before we dive into the preview of our Level 1 playoffs, let's talk about what we saw in Week 9. We'll start off with our token Platteville truther, Steve Prestegard. You got to see Platteville defeat River Valley 45-0 while they opened their brand new activities complex at Platteville High School. First of all, is the complex as great inside as it is outside? And two, Platteville getting their 6th shutout win of the season, looking every part of that number 1 seed in Division 4 and taking care of business to close out the regular season.
Well, there's always a couple of hiccups. One of them is probably who goes where in the press box, because it was a hair crowded in there, although the weather may have had something to do with that. But they've got a touchdown song now. They've got a great facility, terrific scoreboard. The lights do cool things when Platteville scores. The only problem with the place is that actually there are 2 problems with the place. It's obsolete now, of course, because there is not a sign that says the Platteville won the 2023 SWC title. And the other thing is we still don't know whether or not the visitor side scoreboard score works, because it was stuck at 0 the whole game. And of course, Platteville, I think, really got everything that they wanted to out of the game as far as on the field. They got their 6th shutout of the season, and this particular one, unlike some of the games they've had this year, they really got it on turnovers. They did give up a couple of big plays, but they only got into the green zone once, River Valley, and promptly turned the ball over. So, this is a defense that can nail you in a lot of different ways. They can stuff some teams, and they can just make plays and get the ball back in some cases. They also got the running game going, which was very helpful given how rotten the weather was. They wanted to do that anyway because, everybody knows that running is extremely important in the postseason. And, they've got a home run hitter at running back now in Tyler Sass, who is averaging something like 9 yards a carry. He's not a big guy, but he is awful fast, and he has the ability to make people miss, as the River Valley defense found to their misfortune. So I think Platteville really got everything they wanted to out of that game Friday night, and including the number 1 seed.
Yeah, while you were there as well, what'd you make of the win for Platteville?
Pretty much the same as Steve. That's really impressed me. And it wasn't just the fact that he's fast and he ran and scored touchdowns and all that, but what I really liked is how he did it. I like the fact that he showed patience when he was running the football, where all of a sudden he's coming to hit that hole quick, and then all of a sudden he just kind of eases up and then kicks it in again, as all of a sudden people kind of get out of his way. He did that on a couple of the plays we saw. He did that on the screen pass, which they had one guy who could have made the play, and he just let the guy run right by him, and then whoop, and away he went again. It's stuff like that he does that's so impressive. But I think what's going to be interesting too is now, from what I understand, Steve, tell me if I'm correct, they're getting Riley Donahue back.
Right.
And now we're looking at having a little more power if you need it back there in the running back position. He's more powerful than Sass is. So you do get that. And one of the other things I was impressed, especially again, Donahue was out that game. Pardon? Donahue was out, and all of a sudden we saw that we had somebody else in as linebacker as a name I'd never heard before. He played well. He played very well. So really, Platteville is in real good shape in the linebacker position. They really are. And the other thing that, again, I mentioned this before, but I'm impressed with the fact that they're a lot younger than people think they are. You know, they're looking and they see a few seniors on the team. We only see 4 that are really play. Everything else is juniors and a few sophomores. So they're going to be back. They really will. And back with a vengeance like crazy. They don't have to have any vengeance because they're already the conference champions. But they're going to be a heck of a team next year, and they're really good this year.
Yeah, but we'll see what the postseason has in store for them as we head into level 1 coming up on Friday night. Tom, you and I got to see Lancaster defeat Brodhead Judah 44-14 in what it's kind of a weird game to describe because Lancaster looked really dominant, but they also shot themselves in the foot quite a bit with penalties. There was some weird stuff with the officials during the game in that one. And, one stat line that, kind of tells the story, at least from my perspective, looking at the stats, Peyton Alvarado had 43 carries in that game. And by my count, unofficially, Brodhead Judah ran 25 plays of offense. And I believe you had them down for only 3 converted first downs in that contest. So it was a very, we'll say, suffocating win for Lancaster. They really had Brodhead Judah in control of it. But yeah, there were a couple things that Coach Rolland probably wanted to chat with his team about and get cleaned up before heading into level 1.
Yeah, it's probably good he asked something to get the guys' attention, going into the playoffs. Well, Nolan Wolf, again, was efficient and effective, 8 out of 12, 111 yards, 3 touchdowns. As you said, Peyton Alvarado, 43 carries and 320 yards, 3 touchdowns. I think he had 3 2-point conversions as well. They just couldn't stop him. And Brodhead Judah is a good defensive team, and Lancaster just ran right through them. I had Brodhead Judah for only 48 yards rushing the whole night, and their 2 scorers came on 2 big plays. There was a kickoff that was the kickoff was kicked short. It bounced around, and I don't know if the Lancaster kids kind of thought it was going to be downed or they got out of their lanes, and it was a long kickoff return. And then a long pass, I think about 51 yards, that I thought the kid was covered. I thought Lancaster had good coverage. Somehow the ball got through. So I would suspect Coach Rollins will be talking to his kids about special teams and tightening up the pass defense. But those penalties, some of those penalties that they committed will come back to haunt them in the postseason if they don't get them cleaned up. And now you're getting to week 10. They should be cleaned up by now, and maybe that is just something you're going to have to deal with. I don't know.
Yeah, there were a lot of pre-snap penalties, a lot of false starts, illegal procedures, and granted, I don't know how much the weather factors into it when you're trying to get that leverage, on a slippery surface and stuff like that. I don't know how much that really factors into it, but man, there were quite a few Pinks penalties at very inopportune times. And, luckily Peyton Alvarado was able to carry the load and help Lancaster overcome those. But, as you head into the postseason, like you said, Tom, that can't always be the case. You can't expect, the workhorse and, just having the offense to overcome their own self-inflicted wounds when the competition is going to start ramping up. Go ahead, Wally.
One of the things that strikes me about all that kind of stuff is the fact that, generally speaking, Lancaster kids have paid attention when it comes to not making the dumb mistakes. That's the way they've been traditionally, not doing the dumb things. The dumb things like jumping offside, lining up offside, all of that kind of stuff. And if they're doing that now, they could be in trouble as the tournament season moves on. I mean, big trouble, because you can't make those kinds of mistakes against good teams. You just can't. They got by with it against a good team last week because they were able to dominate them up front. But are you going to, I don't know enough about Cambridge to talk if you can dominate them up front or not. But as you move along and you go, if you beat Cambridge and then you run into Kenosha St. Joe's, well, they got the same thing up front you've got. So you can't be making those silly mistakes.
Yeah, definitely. And Lancaster takes Cambridge on Friday night. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. The game that we had on Super Hits 106 last Friday, Mineral Point defeated Cuba City 14-7 in a low-scoring affair. I'll turn to Wally first, and then Steve. Mineral Point getting a win over the Cubans, establishing themselves as the number 2 team in the SWAL and getting themselves a pretty respectable seed at number 5. They'll have to go on the road against Racine, but a nice win for Mineral Point and some momentum heading into the postseason.
I give compliments right away to Mineral Point and their defense, because Cuba City is a lot better offensively, especially when they're back at full strength. And if they're holding them down to just one score, wow, that's really saying something. I'm not surprised Cuba City holding Mineral Point down to 2 scores. I'm not surprised there at all, because I think Cuba City defensively is a very fine football team. They've had some ups and downs this year because of injuries on offense, but I'm surprised at how that game turned out. I really am.
Right, and Steve, yeah, you had mentioned that Mineral Point has been one of those teams that's been most improved as the season has gone along, and this was a very nice win for the Pointers as they head into postseason play.
Oh, absolutely. You look at, their losses, Mineral Point's losses, let's keep in mind, all the playoff teams. They lost to Lancaster, got shut out by Platteville at the start of the season. We've talked before that it kind of took Platteville 1 game to get going this year. It took Mineral Point 2 to get going this year. But, one thing I think that Mineral Point probably benefited from also a strength of schedule when you consider, that their 3 losses are to team, all the 2 teams that make the playoffs. Mineral Point, I think, is unpredictable enough that they might, they're the lower seed, obviously, on Friday. But they've played in a difficult conference, and I have to think that they're a decent shot to come up with a road win on Friday.
I'd agree with that with Point on against Racine Lutheran. Racine Lutheran is a good football team. One of the few teams that did beat them this year was Kenosha St. Joe's, but again, that's still a fairly tough conference over there.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see what happens with the Pointers as they head into the postseason. And the final game that we had on Queen Bee Radio last week, River Ridge defeating Benton Scales Mount Charlesburg 60-8 for River Ridge to clinch a spot in the postseason. Although, had they lost, I'm sure they would have gotten in anyway. But Scott, you got to see that matchup, and I'm sure River Ridge probably a little bit agitated heading into that matchup, coming off a very emotional loss to Potosi-Cassville. They wanted to make a statement against a team from Benton Scales Mountain Charlesburg that was a bit, undermanned. They had a number of injuries heading into that game, but River Ridge seems, at least on the scoreboard, to have looked the part. What'd you see from that matchup last Friday night?
Oh, you pretty well summed the whole thing up. You just saw a dominant team. Just dominated their opponent. I mean, they scored passing, running, block punt, kick or punt return. So they did a little bit of everything, and nothing to take away from Benton Scales Mount Charlesburg. They just were undermanned. Injuries, the injury bug really hurt them. They had a freshman quarterback playing. He didn't do too bad of a job, but unfortunately, they just couldn't get anything going, and River Ridge truly dominated the whole game. And they looked decent, and I think Wade was pretty happy with the offense. It was balanced. They ran and passed. Even in that bad weather, they still threw the ball pretty good. So I would say they're going to beat Highland in that round, the first round. And yeah, you're right about the idea that the Ridge and Valley is a weaker conference than the Six Rivers. But you always wonder how the WIAA sees people. But
yeah, again, it's in the hands of computers. There's no eye test or anything like that. So yeah, again, we'll kind of see how everything goes with River Ridge taking on Highland again. We'll have that game on Friday night on ESPN Radio, AM 1590 WPVL, and on the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Let's quickly run down some of the other scores from the other conferences. In the SWC, Prairie du Chien got a win via forfeit to a team that no longer exists, Montello, Princeton, Green Lake, because I believe those are 2 8-player football teams now. Right. And then Richland Center, Scott, you mentioned earlier, defeated Dodgeville 51-6. Again, probably just kind of a last gasp effort for Richland Center to try and find their way into the playoff. But unfortunately, the computer told them no, that they were not a playoff qualifying team. But yeah, I guess your reaction, Scott, to that dominant win for Richland Center, because yes, those were 2 teams at the very bottom of the SWC, but going head to head, I was not expecting Richland Center to be as dominant as they were against Dodgeville.
No, they did everything they possibly could against Dodgeville, and it just seemed like Dodgeville they didn't quit, they just struggled. And Dodgeville's young, and when you look at the playoff seeding, and it is computer generated, in a defense, Richland Center, they beat Wautoma, they beat River Valley, and they beat Dodgeville. And I think between those 3 teams, they don't have more than 3 wins or 4 wins total. So that probably hurt Richland Center down in the long run.
Definitely. Moving on to the SWAL, Darlington defeated Fenimore 49-0. Belleville defeated Parkview Albany 31-0. A couple shutouts in the other SWAL games that we didn't cover on our airwaves. But Wally, I don't think any real surprises in that. Darlington, obviously, in dominant fashion over a Fenimore team that just hasn't been able to find any momentum. And then Belleville defeating Parkview Albany, which has been struggling just to field a team just with the injuries and the numbers that they have with their program. So no real surprises, at least from our vantage point.
No, really, there aren't any surprises there. Actually, the only surprise I had was that Orfordville Parkview Albany was able to field the team and play the game. But again, Bellevue is one of their rivals, and they had to play that game just because of that. But again, I'm not surprised at the Darlington Fenimore score. Fenimore is so young. I mean, you get a couple more injuries and they're playing freshmen. So they're really down there quite a ways. So they'll be better next year.
Yep, definitely. The other Six Rivers games, Potosi-Cassville got by Southwestern East Dubuque 20-6 in a bit of a low scoring matchup in that contest. And then Blackhawk Warren over Peck Argyle 44-6. Steve, again, no real surprises, at least as far as the results. Maybe the final score of the Potosi-Cassville Southwestern East Dubuque game might raise a couple of eyebrows, but again, that's a very good, very scrappy Southwestern East Dubuque team, and kind of tying to a point that we were mentioning earlier, probably something good for Potosi-Cassville heading into the postseason, maybe some things to work on and, keep their guys in check as they head into the level 1 playoff. Did we lose them?
Well, I'll respond to that real quick. Sure. I completely agree with you. I think that it was good for Potosi-Cassville to run into a game like that. And in fact, they had 2 games in a row that were tough. And I think you need that when you're going into the playoffs, and even though we're not talking about them necessarily, but that was a problem Prairie du Chien was going to have. They didn't have a game. And when you come into the playoffs on a forfeit, you got a week without a game. And that's not good right before the playoffs. You're not ready to play necessarily. I mean, hopefully for Prairie du Chien's sake, they are. But again, with this particular game, Southwestern East Dubuque is better than a lot of people think, and if they had one more team in their conference, they might have had another win, and they might have been in the playoffs.
Wally, can I be the contrarian to what you're saying in terms of what essentially was a bye for Prairie du Chien? I agree with you, unless, like Potosi has had some injury problems here the last couple of weeks. Maybe you need that forfeit as a bye to heal up. That healing up might be more important than playing a game.
I kind of agree with that. Agree with that, but I also know what Wally's saying, because back in 95, 96, whatever year it was, the Blackhawk had a floating bye, and we ended up with the bye in the 9th week, and we couldn't find a team to play, so we had that bye, and we were in the playoffs, and we just we weren't ready. I mean, you can practice, but it seems like the kids lost that drive.
Mm-hmm.
So that can hurt. In high school, it can hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe a bye hurts you more than it helps you. I agree with what you're saying, Tom, is that, yeah, if you've got all of these injuries, you got a little time to heal. But you know what? Depending on who you're playing in that one, and we'll look at Potosi Caswell or Southwestern East Dubuque, how many of their kids that may have had bumps and bruises didn't play very much? They may not have. I don't know, because I wasn't there. But you try to do that if you can, rest kids as much as you can on a game like that coming in. But most of the kids, they have to play. They really do.
Yeah, but I think it's back to, that cliched rest versus rust, right? And I think it kind of depends on the makeup of the team. If you have a younger team or an inexperienced team, you want to get that experience. But if your team has been together and cohesive for a while, you kind of know what your roles are going to be. Rust might not be the worst thing. So I guess it kind of depends on your perspective and what the makeup of the team is. I think in the case of Prairie du Chien, though, when you see what that bracket looks like, I think that rest is going to help as far as helping determine what that path is going to look like. Because if they get by Clinton, and they should, you're looking at Columbus, the reigning Division IV state champions, coming to your house. So, there's, maybe that extra, game planning and just making sure that your team is in check, taking care of some things in-house, and not having to worry so much about, getting other players hurt or stuff like that in a game that probably wouldn't have had all that much meaning for them anyway. So I guess that's kind of my thoughts on that as well. Let's, Steve, I hope your internet connection is still working, so that way we can say some nice things about the Ridge and Valley. Highland defeated Riverdale 47-8. Seneca Wazeeka Steuben shutout basketball 42-0. Ithaca also getting a shutout over Hillsborough 22-0. And Iowa Grant defeated Brookwood 36-6. We talked about this on Saturday when we had our bracket revealed, that the Ridge and Valley did put 4 teams in the playoff, but all 4 teams are playing on the road. So, yes, they have all the teams in, but they don't necessarily get the favorable matchups. And, for Highland, closing out the season with a lot of momentum, closing things out, on a high note. They're on a 3-game winning streak, and I think they've established themselves as the top team in the Ridge Valley, because if you break down their record, their 3 losses are to teams that aren't Ridge and Valley teams. Their loss to Royal, I mentioned on Saturday, was a conference win, but it was their crossover game with the Scenic Bluffs. So, they were the top team in the Ridge and Valley. They beat all those Ridge and Valley teams head to head, and thus won the conference title. But looking at the other Ridge and Valley teams, congrats on getting into the playoff, but you have a huge uphill battle heading into level 1.
Yeah, and that's not a particular surprise. I think I may have predicted, not on the record, but that none of the Ridge and Valley teams that got in the playoffs would be home. The fact they got 4 in was, I think, pretty much an accomplishment. It was too bad for Iowa Grant. They did what they needed to do to get on the bubble, but like Richland Center, the bubble burst underneath them. But yeah, Highland, I think, is the demonstrated themselves that they are the best team in the Ridge and Valley. Hillsboro is kind of running on fumes coming into the postseason because they lost their last 2 games. You know, the very unpredictable Wazeeka Steuben Seneca. I mean, who knows what they're going to end up doing, just because they've been maybe the most unpredictable team in the Ridge and Valley this year. And put all that together, put the records together, and keep in mind they're done. The conference ended Friday night, and they certainly went out in an entertaining fashion. You know, probably in the scheme of things, none of the teams are, as you know, certainly as good as you know, the top Ridge or top 6 Rivers teams. Certainly not as good as the ranked teams out of the Scenic Bluffs, but you know, you couldn't say you weren't entertained by the Ridge and Valley this year.
Yeah, it is kind of unfortunate that you know, the Ridge and Valley teams were very fun to watch. There were some very entertaining football games in that conference, but you know, as we've, you know, kind of established that, you know, the level of competition in the Ridge and Valley just not on the same par with, you know, a 6 Rivers or a Swall or you know, a conference like that. And you know, it's shown in those out of conference matchups where, you know, the out of conference opponents have blown those teams out. But you know, hopefully those you know, programs, as they get integrated into new conferences, that they'll have some success down the line. And before we close up our week 5 or our week 9 recap, I don't know why I said week 5, it's week 9, but our high 5, that's what I was getting to, the Steve's high 5. And you had mentioned, Steve, to me that there were no changes to the high 5. So should we just copy paste what you said last week, insert it into this program, and just go from there? Or are there things that you would like to add to it?
Well, I'll read it. You know, for the new thing this week. The reason it hasn't changed is because all 5 teams basically held serve. So Blackhawk Warren again 5th, Lancaster 4th, Potosi Cassville 3rd, Darlington 2nd, and once again Platteville number 1. I think other than a relatively low scoring game for Potosi Cassville, because of the opponent that they played, because Southwestern East Dubuque's played everybody tough, even if they haven't beat them. But other than that, you know, basically everybody did what they wanted to do this week, and Potosi Cassville got a number 1 seed, and Platteville got a number 1 seed, and Darlington got a number 1 seed. And the difference between those 3 getting a number 1 seed, well, 2 of them, Platteville and Darlington, getting a number 1 seed, and teams with the same records, Lancaster and Blackhawk Warren, not getting a number 1 seed, is simply what game they lost. And that was the game Platteville and Darlington both lost non-conference games, but Lancaster and Blackhawk Warren lost conference games. Technically, so did Potosi Cassville, because it was one of their crossover games, which the WIAA does count, even if the 6 Rivers doesn't. But obviously, the computer was kind to them for losing to, you know, one of the best teams in the area, and beyond, probably in Darlington. So that's now my question, I suppose, is that the last high 5, or do we keep going for the playoffs for this? Because it's conceivable that there may be fewer than 5 teams. Or do we print the T-shirts that say, "Here's the last high 5 of the season"?
I just have one question about the high 5. Did you determine the high 5 using a computer, or did you determine the high 5 using your own human intuition?
I used up here. You can judge yourself whether that worked or not. But I will tell you that I probably maybe changed the criteria from week to week. But I just, you know, you look at those 5 teams. They all have the same record. They're all 8-1, and so they have the best record. You can certainly make an argument that, you know, Prairie du Chien is a very good team. There's no question about that. But you know, I kind of said, well, what did they accomplish this year? And they all accomplished 8 wins, and you have, you know, 3 number 1 seeds in that group. A team, at least 1, maybe 2, that could argue that they should have had a higher seed than they did in terms of Lancaster and Blackhawk Warren. So I guess we'll see after that, won't we?
Yep, certainly. And, Tom, Scott, and Wally, this is your last chance to tell Steve that he's wrong about his high five. So is there anything that you guys would like to chime in on that, or are we kind of in agreement with it?
I would move Lancaster up. They lost by an extra point to Steve's number one team. I mean, they could very well have won that game. I think Lancaster is at least a 3 on Steve's list of 5. That's what I think.
I agree with that one.
I'm not sure they're not number 2.
They could be number 2. I hope we get a chance to see that Darlington and Lancaster prove who's number 2 in a level 3 playoff game.
Yeah, I do too.
Because remember, Lancaster was this close to being undefeated. Mm-hmm. If that 2-point conversion had gone in the final, minute 14 of that game, this discussion looks a little bit different, and Lancaster's an undefeated conference champion. So I think that there's definitely a case to be made for Lancaster being a 2, but that's most likely our last opportunity to tell Steve Prestegard that he is wrong about ranking teams in our area. So we'll take that opportunity to do that when we can. So that is, again, Steve Prestegard's high five. The guys will be back in just a little bit to preview the games that we have on Queen Bee Radio for our level 1 playoff coverage. We'll also talk about some of the other matchups in our area in high school football. The Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup continues after this on YouTube and SoundCloud. This one-on-one with the Great One interview is presented by People's State Bank.
Looking for a checking account with no monthly requirements or service charge? People's State Bank's People's Checking Account is just what you're looking for. This account includes free debit card, online and mobile banking, bill pay, and much more at no cost to you. You heard that right. No cost to you. We're your local community bank ready to serve you. People's State Bank. Member FDIC.
Welcome back to the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup, presented by Vertical Rays Milwaukee. It's time for us to go one-on-one with the Great One, presented by People's State Bank, and we are pleased to be joined by Lancaster Flying Arrows head coach, coming off a very successful regular season, an 8-1 record overall. They have a 3 seed heading into the Division 6 playoffs coming up this week. Coach Rolland, thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Tyler.
Yep, absolutely. And one of the things that we like to do with these one-on-one with the Great One interviews is talk about the coaching journey that you've been on. This is your 3rd full season with the Lancaster Flying Arrows program, but you've been an assistant coach and have played football with the Lancaster program in high school. Talk about your coaching journey, what led you into coaching, and what's kept you in the coaching field over these past few years.
I think the biggest thing is just the family aspect of it. Like, my brothers played football growing up. I have 2 older brothers. My dad coached for years in the Lancaster program. He started in, I think, 82. So, I mean, that's all I've really known, I guess. I grew up. I was a manager from 1st grade on. I was on a lot of state title teams. It's just it's been part of our family growing up, everything. And then I just enjoy football. I mean, I think it's the best ultimate team game. I enjoy the relationships you build with kids as we go. I went after Lancaster, after I played here, I kind of went up to Eau Claire. Didn't play a ton on I didn't play up there, injuries and that kind of stuff. So I think that just kept my interest. Like, I wasn't done with the sport, or even if the sport was done with me, I wasn't really done with it. And then came back after college in Eau Claire, came back here, helped out, kind of the same, as Lancaster football. I just really enjoy it. It's, been part of my life growing up, and I have a lot of friends on the coaching staff and everything like that. So it's a very comfortable spot for me. So, yeah.
Yep. And of course, you took over the program from legendary head coach John Hoke. You played for him, you coached under him, and you got to experience firsthand the success that he had in that head coaching spot. But since you took over the program in 2021, have you tried to keep things kind of the same? And are there some things that you might have had to do to kind of put your own stamp on this Lancaster program?
Yeah, I think right away, you don't want to follow in the footsteps, I guess, or you want to do something that it's like it's it's your program, or like you said, put your stamp on it. And I think switching up with the offense, we tweaked the defense a little bit. I think those are like big changes. I think people notice, like we went into the shotgun, we ran some zone reads and that kind of stuff. And I think as you self-reflect, there's some things that are okay, like triple option, and going back to that is, proven to be successful, and we know it, and all that stuff. So I think like you just have to self-scout and, evaluate yourself and understand like it's okay to, do what John did and Coach Hoke did. It was successful. So, it makes sense. And there's some wrinkles, we do a little different things. But the biggest thing I think I took away from Coach Hoke was like the coaching staff, like having multiple guys on and guys that are interested in coaching. I know a lot of coaches or other teams, comment on how many coaches we have, and it's a good group of guys with common goals, common interests. So it's not really work for us. It's a lot of our hobby. Like we enjoy practices. We enjoy time, spent together. I look at like after the game last week, we go over to one of the coaches' house. We hang out in their garage. We, eat pizza. We watch our game film, and then, watch some other teams or teams that we're going to play film and that kind of stuff. And we get 15 coaches there. And I think other programs don't have 15 coaches that even, want to coach. So that's one thing. I think that's the biggest thing that I've taken away from Coach Hoke's coaching. I know we run similar offense and the practice plans are very similar, and all that stuff is, we've kept the standard, or at least are trying to keep the standard that he had. But I think the coaching staff and having great coaches coach with me is one of the things that he had, and I'm trying to continue, and I have right now.
Yeah, there's definitely some great memories being built with this special season that you're having in Lancaster this year. But going back to your playing days and your coaching experience, what are some of your favorite memories being part of the Flying Arrows program?
Okay, honestly, playing in a state title is up there, but like some of the ones that like just stick with me, like it feels like I was still there. When my brother Nate, so he'd be my the younger older brother, I guess. He's 7 years older than me, and he was on a team that went 3 years in a row. And his junior year, his playoff game against St. Mary Springs, it was a double overtime game. Coach Hoke pulled his calf and just celebrating after we won. I'd just those moments, and I was a manager for all those, and just getting to experience those. That game, I remember going to state that year playing Prescott in the snow. I remember all that stuff as a kid, and it just feels now that I'm older, all these games go so fast, and they just I remember games from 2-3 years ago. It doesn't feel like it's 2-3 years ago. It feels like it was a couple weeks ago type thing, and they just all blend together. Where when I was a kid, I remember I just was so excited for Lancaster football as a manager. I look more Friday nights were my favorite, more so than the Badger games, Packer games. So my brother Nate's state runs are probably my favorite memory. I know playing we played in one and all that stuff, but those just stick with me forever. Dyeing my hair with his number in it, just all that kind of stuff as a kid, as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, very impressionable. Those guys were, the guys he played with were some of my idols as a kid. I wanted to be like them and all that stuff. And no, those are probably my favorite highlights. I've been at all the state title games, either on the sideline or in the booth. And those are obviously great memories. You don't forget going to Camp Randall and all that. But I think just watching your brother do it, those are probably my favorite. And I just wasn't old enough. I was only 3 years old when my oldest brother won his, so I'm sure that would have been equally as memorable, but I just not as old. So.
Right. Yeah, but we've talked about during our interviews, in pregame and sometimes postgame about this Lancaster team this year. It's been so much fun seeing this team grow as the season has gone along, and it really does feel like there's something really special about this Flying Arrows team. I don't think it's really fair to compare teams from year to year that you coach, but what stands out the most to you about this 2023 team?
Just their hard work. They like we've pushed them more, I guess, and they've accepted the challenge. I know we use that term a lot, week to week, in our program, but they're a hardworking group of kids. And that's not to say that last year's kids weren't hardworking or the year before that. They've stayed healthy. I mean, they've caught some good breaks on like staying healthy, and all that stuff has happened to us. Like we've had a couple scares throughout the year that we kind of got over with. Will Busson's one, especially like his injury early in the year really scared us. One of our best linemen, just best players. He got back, and we're getting healthy right now, which is like you need to do at our level with only having 50 kids out, and really having 30 younger kids. It's really important for our 20 upperclassmen to stay healthy, and we've been lucky to do so. But I mean, the credit goes to the kids. They work extremely hard. Our coaches put nice game plans together, and just week to week pushing the kids. And they respond very well. They've played some really good teams, Prairie and Platteville and Broadhead and Mineral Point, Cuba, just some playoff teams. Like they've had a tough schedule. They're very resilient, and I think they've bought in. I think a new coach, just doing some things. You then change the offense after 2 years. There's some questions. We don't really score a lot of points the first few weeks changing to it, and I think now that we've had some success, the offensive lineman's kind of, humming, defense is playing better, special teams is, clicking for the most part, here and there, a slip up, but overall doing very well. I think kids are buying in, and I think they want to be, they want to be winners, and they work hard. I mean, that's what it kind of comes down to.
Yep, and looking ahead to Friday night's game against Cambridge, you have a home game as a 3 seed in Division 6. I thought you had a very strong case to be a number 1 or even a 2 seed, but with your team being 2 points away from being undefeated on the year. But I'm going to get off my soapbox and say that there's a lot of really good teams in this quadrant of the bracket. But what do you make of your team's matchup against Cambridge, and what the postseason path looks like for the Flying Arrows?
We're looking at Cambridge, but I'd be lying if you don't notice where you get seated and who's with you. There's some common opponents later on in the bracket if we are fortunate enough to take care of business on Friday. Cambridge, they have plenty of they give us plenty of they'll strain our defense, especially with how much they pass. They have a very good quarterback. They do a lot of different looks on defense. So I mean, that team, they're a very talented, explosive 6 seed. But no, our bracket is, our kids understand the assignment, I guess, of what's in front of them. I mean, they aren't like, we don't shy away from you don't want to look ahead, but we're like, they understand the bracket is not an easy bracket. And they understand, they're with you. They agree that we thought we were better than a 3 seed. They wanted more home games, but it is what it is. We'll play the opponent that's in front of us on Friday nights, and hopefully we take care of business.
Yeah, we're looking forward to see what happens with this Flying Arrows team as the postseason goes along. Should be a fun postseason run. Looking forward to covering it on our Queen Bee Radio family of stations on 97.7 Country, WGLR, and also some of the games on our Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Hey, Coach, thanks a lot for joining us. We appreciate the time. Good luck on Friday night, and good luck the rest of the postseason.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate you covering our area for sports. I appreciate you guys talking about our team and all our kids. Thank you.
Yep, appreciate the sentiment. That's Coach Jordon Rolland of the Lancaster Flying Arrows. We'll have more on the High School Sports Roundup after this on YouTube and SoundCloud.
Vertical Raise is the premier online donation platform, utilizing email, text messaging, and social media campaigns to exponentially increase the reach of your fundraiser. With detailed tracking and the complete personalization of every page, Vertical Raise provides an easy system that works. Our experienced representatives have made us the most effective fundraising platform available. We look forward to the opportunity in helping elevate your program to the next level and reaching your goals. Visit online or call today.
Back on the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup, presented by Vertical Rays Milwaukee. It's time to preview our Level 1 high school football playoff action across our Queen Bee Radio family of stations. We'll start off with the Platteville Hillmen. They are a number 1 seed in Division 4. They host number 8 seeded Jefferson. That'll be on Extreme 107.1. Steve Pressegard and Wally Troughton. You'll have the call of that one. And Steve, what stands out about this matchup for the Hillmen coming up on Friday night?
Well, for one thing, and it's kind of amazing that this is the case, but this is the first time that Platteville's ever had a number 1 seed. They've never had a higher seed than number 2. Of course, when I say ever, that dates back to 2000 when seeding began. Platteville, in 1983, when they won the state championship, they had 2 home games. And Wally, who did they beat in those 2 home games?
They had a very interesting game against Prairie du Chien, but they had a much more interesting game against DeForest, which is probably one of the better high school games I've ever seen. And there's stories about that game that I would share that are not, I wouldn't share out in the public like this, but there's some lines that came from that game from a number of different people that are hilarious when we look back at it today. That was just a tremendous football game.
Yeah, and then of course they went to Camp Randall and won the whole thing. I think if there was a question about Platteville, and I don't know if this is overrated or not, but they've got the 6 shutouts. They can put a ton of points on the scoreboard. And they, most of the season they've actually run pretty clean games in the sense of not having, a significant number of turnovers and not having a lot of penalties. The one question that I think everybody might have about this team is what are they going to do in the postseason? Because the postseason is not the same thing as the regular season. You can have a bad game, week 1, for instance, for Platteville, but you got another game the next week. Well, if you lose Friday, you don't have another game. You're all done. And, this is a team that doesn't have a lot of seniors. Usually a team relies on senior leadership when they get into the postseason. And they don't have institutional memory of playing winning football in the playoffs. Their last playoff win was in 2017. Just off the top of my head, they have not gone farther than level 2 since 2013, which was, of course, the team that surprised everybody and went to state. So I kind of wonder what that's going to be like for this team. But having said that, they're playing the number 8 seed and a team that needed to win 3 games in a row just to get in the playoffs. Maybe that's not going to be an issue Friday. But I do kind of wonder about that.
When you talk about leadership, senior leadership, I think it's interesting because I think they do have some pretty good senior leadership, but it only comes from a few people. I guess we saw that at the coin toss of the last football game. They were all injured seniors that went out to do the coin toss. And they came back cheering the rest of them on. They were almost like cheerleaders on the bench, working with the other kids and patting them on the back and just getting them to move. That's one of the things leaders do. I think you've got a few seniors there that do stand out and do lead. They don't have many of them, but what they've got seem to be pretty strong in that regard. How will that get them all the way through the playoffs? It's hard to say. We won't know until it happens. But I guess I'm impressed with just some of those kids that were unable to play and how they boosted the other kids to play, because they certainly did, and they played well. So I was impressed with that. When you mentioned Jefferson, I've seen some film on Jefferson, and it's interesting. They certainly like to go left. On all the film I saw, they like to go to the left. I don't know why, but they sure seem to do it a lot, because almost every big play they had was to the left, and they like to go wide. And you're going to have fun going wide on Platteville because they cover wide pretty well because they've got some speed out there, more than what some people might realize. I don't know. This could be. I really believe this is Platteville's game to win. I mean, they're going to have to make some mistakes, I believe, not to pull it off.
Jefferson does have a 1,500-yard rusher, although, the River Valley kid whose name escapes me, the running back, who got his 1,000 yards against Platteville, had to work really hard to get get as many as 93 yards in that game. They also have a 1,000-yard rusher, or a 1,000-yard passer, I mean. This was a team that got off to a really bad start. They were 1-4 at one point and had to win their last three, I believe, to get in the playoffs, which they did manage to do. They avoided the bubble thing, although the truth of it is they were going to get in anyway, given what their record was before week 9, because East Troy canceled their season at the start of the year. They were kind of their conference's answer to Montello, Princeton, Green Lake out of the South Central Conference. So they inserted a Christian school from Illinois and beat them pretty handily. So they did not have the issue that Prairie du Chien may or may not have in terms of not having played this past week. But you kind of wonder, did they really accomplish a whole lot, by getting that win? Just as we were talking before about, do you want to play in that last week or not? I do think that Platteville is, they're playing very well right now in the things you want to do to succeed in the playoffs, which is basically your defense. And if the weather's bad, running the football. I think that as things have turned out, the defense gets all the credit because of the 6 shutouts, but they have turned out to have a very versatile offense. They can really move the ball by passing or running the football, which I don't think people thought that was going to be the case necessarily about 6 weeks ago.
One of the other things, and you mentioned about Jefferson with having the kid that's rushed for a lot of yards. When you line up as an I and you only give him the ball, chances are he's going to get a lot of yards because they don't give the ball to anyone else. And the quarterback doesn't run the ball. He's it. And that's it. Some teams in running out of the I, they'll give their fullback a few token runs. Token? His whole season was token running the ball. I don't think he had more than 10 carries the whole season. And so, I mean, yeah, he's going to get a lot of yards. I would expect that. But I just don't see them doing as well rushing the football against Platteville like Lancaster would. Because they've got a couple of good kids up front, but they don't have the quantity of them that Lancaster does. So I don't see those things happening necessarily. And if this is as nice a night as I think it's going to be, I was impressed with how PJ Think throws a football. He hands it off real nice, but he throws it real nice too. So it could be not a fun game if you're from Jefferson. And I do have Steve, I have your trivia for you.
All right.
Do you know that even though Jefferson and Platteville have never played before, there is a relationship between the two teams?
Which is?
A football coach. Ray Heim was a coach at Jefferson before he came to Dodgeville and then Platteville. So there is that relationship. And when I got the roster from secretary there, I said, yeah, we have this relationship with a former coach from Jefferson that was a Hall of Fame retired coach from Platteville. Who's that? And I said, Ray Heim. Oh, good heavens, this is telling my age, but I remember him. So that came back a lot of years because let's face it, Scott, he was in Dodgeville many, many, many years ago.
Wasn't expecting Wally Trouton to out trivia Steve Pressigard in this podcast, but here we are.
Wow.
Jefferson takes on Platteville on Friday night on Extreme 107.1. Our Platteville Truthers, Steve Pressigard and Wally Trouton, with the call of that one. Let's move on to the game that we have in Division 6 at Lancaster. The Flying Arrows host Cambridge on 97.7 Country WGLR and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Scott Tolzman, you'll be there to call that one. And what do you make of the matchup for the Flying Arrows against Cambridge on Friday night?
I look at Lancaster being the more dominated team. Wolf passing, Alvarado running the ball, the big front line. I really think when I look at Cambridge, they finished 5-4 and 4-3 overall in the conference. But the only team they beat that's in the playoffs is Marshall. The rest of the teams that are in the playoffs that they played, they lost to. The highlights of it, though, is they got a quarterback that's got over 2,000 yards. He's completing 60% of his passes. If there is a downfall with Lancaster a little bit, it is their pass defense. And it's not just one receiver getting the ball. It's equally distributed between three receivers. And then the running game, or I should say that back, 4 receivers. They from anywhere from 300 yards to 600 yards. And they count for, 24 touchdowns. And in the running backs count for 11 touchdowns, and their yardage isn't as much. Those between the 3 running backs, there's 221, 281, and 338. But when you look at those receivers, they like to throw the ball. So Lancaster's really going to have to step up their pass defense. And we were talking about it before, and I saw this last year, and I again saw it this year, is penalties have hurt Lancaster. It hurt them last year. It hurt them in the playoffs. And you can't have that happen again this week. I mean, playoffs it's one and done. So you can't make those simple mistakes in the playoffs.
Control the controllables. Yes, absolutely. Tom, go ahead.
The quarterback that Scott talked about was Matt Buckman, 24 touchdown passes, over 2,000 yards. And he also averages 10 yards per rush himself. So he's a dual threat quarterback. Looking at their numbers, they are a different team than we're used to seeing in this part of the state. They only run 36% of the time, and they pass 64% of the time. So I think Lancaster's best pass defense is that physical line play, making it very difficult for Matt Buckman to throw the football. And a couple of the guys have already mentioned it. It's supposed to be a really nice night. Temperatures in the 50s, no rain Friday. So if you're a team like Cambridge who likes to throw the ball around, you kind of catch a break. Level 1 playoffs, the weather's going to be good. And I think they need good weather to throw the football. But I think Lancaster will be able to contain that passing attack by putting pressure on the quarterback.
I would have to believe that Cambridge is really closely studying the Platteville Lancaster game tape,
Yes.
because what Scott has described sounds exactly like maybe a lesser version of Platteville. But that was a game where while Platteville could not figure out the Lancaster option, Lancaster could not figure out how Platteville was throwing the football either. And Cambridge's only shot probably is to do what Platteville did, which was to be able to move the ball around, to not keep throwing it at one guy, but getting, you got to figure if you have 4 receivers, somebody's going to be open. At least you would hope so. And if your offensive line gives your quarterback time to throw. So I have to believe they're going to be, they already have, I'm sure, really, really focused on watching that Platteville Lancaster game.
Yeah, but we'll see how it all shakes out when Cambridge takes on Lancaster on Friday night on 97.7 Country WGLR and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Go ahead, Wally.
I had one other thing about that game in particular that Lancaster has to do. Take care of the football. Because high-risk offense can lead to high-risk bad news things. They have to be careful of that. They've had their issues with that over the years. And take care of the football. Don't make the dumb penalty mistakes.
Yeah, because certainly the last thing you want to do is to give the team that is the underdog the impression that they can win the game. And if you start putting the ball on the ground, giving them extra possessions, that's exactly what can happen.
Yep, agreed. Let's move on to Cuba City. They will travel to Kenosha to take on St. Joseph. That'll be on Super Hits 106. And Wally, I'm looking at Kenosha St. Joseph's schedule and their results right now. We see 4 shutout wins, including a 5th if you include the forfeit against Dominican. But again, this is a team that's only lost 2 games over the last 2 years or so, and yeah, Cuba City going to have their hands full. They do have Cale Dinar back, so that's going to help the running game. But the Cubans, the 7th seed, going to have to fight upwards against a very good Kenosha St. Joseph's team.
One of the things Cuba City has to do is they have to do things to keep the game close. That means you run the football, and you keep running the football. And you do everything you can to get that 5 yards and a cloud of dust. And I say 5 yards in case you make a mistake in there. But I think they have to keep the game close. I think that's the key. Kenosha, I looked a little bit of tape on them as well. And again, they're a team that they like to get down the field. They like to get down the field a lot. And so there could be some challenges there for Cuba City. But again, let's face it, Cuba City is one of the better coached teams in this area. And I think that means an awful lot right there as far as trying to keep things going for them.
Yep, and Cuba City will travel to Kenosha on Friday night. Again, we'll have that game on Super Hits 106. And then on ESPN Radio, AM 5090 WPVL, and on the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel, Highland at River Ridge, a rematch of the first game of the season. Tom Nisus and I will have the call of that matchup. And Tom, I'm really looking forward to covering this one just because, Highland, again, having a bit of momentum heading into the postseason. River Ridge getting things back on the right track after a tough loss to Potosi Cassville 2 weeks ago. But I think one of the keys going into this matchup, especially for River Ridge, is that I'm probably guilty of this as probably as much as anyone, is that when the brackets first came out, I immediately went, oh, River Ridge, Potosi Cassville, that'd be a fun rematch. But I think if people are already looking, ahead, especially if you're on the River Ridge side, if you're overlooking Highland, you might be in trouble. So, yeah, Tom, your thoughts on Highland at River Ridge heading into Friday night?
Well, I think, like most football games, this all comes down to who controls the line of scrimmage. In the first meeting, which was a long time ago, Highland rushed 20 times for a -3 yards. Now, they've got a back by the name of Darren Laufenberg, who's rushed for over 900 yards this year. That night, he had 17 carries and 2 yards. Now, that to me is line play. I'm sure he didn't forget how to run the football. I'm thinking he didn't have a chance to run the football. So I think it's going to be up to Highland's offensive line to block well enough that they can run the football, because they have a pretty good quarterback too. I think his name is Bennett, who's had a pretty good year. So yeah, and Steve just saw him a couple of weeks ago. So River Ridge is very physical at the line of scrimmage. I think Highland has to decide, do we pass to set up the run, or do we run to set up the pass? They're going to have to score more than 7 points. It came down to a desperation pass by Brandon Davis with 20 seconds to go in the game. Yep. I think both teams have improved, but I always go back to who played in the stronger conference. And I think that's River Ridge. And I think that forces you to improve more. And if you look at the comparisons of the scores, I think River Ridge is the superior football team, but you're right. You don't want to get caught looking ahead. I'm not sure about the health of both teams. The weather's going to be nice. River Ridge has the home field advantage. I think they have everything their way. They're just going to have to go out and play a good football game.
Yep, agreed. And Steve, you are one of the people that's seen both Highland and River Ridge. What do you think of this matchup stylistically between the two teams? Oh, we lost him again, didn't we?
It likes to be pretty balanced. You there?
Yeah, we're here. Now we can hear you again.
Okay, let me start over. So I saw Highland beat Hillsborough, and irrespective of what we know the Ridge and Valley was this season, Highland likes to be pretty balanced, and I think that the weather is probably going to be conducive for them to do that. I do think that it's certainly correct that line play is really going to decide this game, particularly because Highland needs to rush the ball better than they did the first time that they played, but they were certainly successful in rushing the ball against Hillsborough. The other thing in that game that they were successful at doing was taking advantage of Hillsborough's mistakes. And, option teams, which Highland is, or which River Ridge is, do have a tendency to put the ball on the ground more often than teams that run non-option offenses like the I or the wing T or whatever. Certainly River Ridge is going to be favored in this game, but they have to make sure that they play well and not just say, well, we beat them the first time, we didn't play them that well, we can certainly win the second time. I don't think that's really the case. You have a team also in Highland that's kind of playing for its conference and playing the last, whenever they finish their season, that's the last 11-player game they have. So intangibles are probably on Highland's side in this game also.
Yeah, I did ask Wade Winkers earlier today. I recorded our pregame interview with him earlier today, and he made he had a very interesting statement when I asked him about whether or not this might be a bit of a revenge game for Highland after what happened in week one. And the way he described it was that this is also a revenge game for River Ridge for that matchup against Highland, because River Ridge did not play well, anywhere near as well as they thought that they could have. And we saw River Ridge struggle offensively the first 3 or 4 games of the season. The defense was playing exceptionally well, and the defense really helped take care of business in the early part of the season. But now that they've established that Brandon Davis is the quarterback, and they're looking at not turning the ball over nearly as much, it does feel like that River Ridge has a lot more confidence heading into this game, and that they know, what the roles are for their offensive weapons. But we'll see how everything shakes out, because playoff football can be very weird sometimes. And we'll see how that matchup shakes out on Friday night. Highland at River Ridge, again on ESPN Radio, AM 1590 WPVL, and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Let's look at the other matchups in Division 7. Potosi-Cassville takes on Hillsborough, and then Blackhawk Warren taking on Seneca-Wazeeka-Steuben. We've kind of talked about this, Steve. Six Rivers Conference teams taking on Ridge and Valley Conference teams. It seems advantage Six Rivers Conference in these matchups.
Yeah, you would certainly think that. Potosi-Cassville has fought their way through injuries that would have ended the season of some teams, frankly, and they have, they've got Eli Adams back now, which is big, and I think they have a couple other people back also, which is important. They are able to play very physical. That's what Hillsborough wants to do also, but they were not able to pull that off that well against Highland when they played. And then as far as Wazeeka-Steuben Seneca got off to such a horrible start of the season. They're certainly playing better now. But on the other hand, Blackhawk Warren, the only reason they're not a number 1 seed is because they made the mistake of losing a conference game at home to Potosi Cassville. So, and the other thing that is going to be a challenge for everybody who plays Black Hawk Warren is that they play an offense that hardly anybody else plays, the split back there, and they do it exceedingly well. They don't spread guys out unless they're going to pass usually. But they just are very, very efficient at running that kind of option offense. And I will say that the teams that are leaving the Ridge and Valley to go into the Six Rivers next season, and so basically that game, Blackhawk Warren and Wazeeka Steuben Seneca, is kind of a preview of next year. They're really going to have to get their games at a higher state, get their team at higher state, because it's going to be really tough to play the likes of Potosi Cassville and River Ridge and Blackhawk Warren every week, and that's what they are looking at next year.
Yep, agreed. Let's move into Division 6. Wally Darlington takes on Belleville. Belleville, again, one of those bubble teams that needed some help getting in. They get in, and their reward is that they get the number 1 seed. Darlington in a rematch of a SWAL matchup, and then Mineral Point traveling to Racine Lutheran. Your thoughts on those Division 6 matchups?
Well, I'm happy for Belleville that they were able to make the playoffs. They're not the Belleville that they have been in the past few years by any means at all. Unfortunately for them, Darlington is. And so it doesn't bode well for them. But they made the playoffs, so they can say they're a playoff team again, unlike Boscobel, who can say they're not again. And sorry, I had to do that for Jimmy just to give him a hard time.
Don't say mean things about Jimmy Casca and his football
I know. Well, we
program.
love Jimmy.
Come
That's
on.
why we talk about it. But I think that's really a shame for Belleville that they had to run into that right away. But it would have been nice for them if they could have had a lesser quality opponent to start off with. But I don't think there's many lesser quality opponents in that whole bracket. Then you look at Mineral Point against Racine Lutheran. We've already talked about Mineral Point, about the fact of how much they have improved as this season has gone on. And they may have ended up being a higher seed had they started out strong. But they face a Racine Lutheran team that's pretty good. I mean, granted, they lost to the number 2 seed in this bracket, Kenosha St. Joe's, but they're still pretty good. And the fact that you have to travel way the heck over to the other side of the state is not a fun trip, because you can't get there from here. Because you're going to have to drive on some weird roads to get there. Steve and I knew that when we went over to Bigfoot and found road construction we didn't think they were going to have. But welcome to Wisconsin this time of the year.
Yeah.
I think it's a winnable game for Mineral Point. It's just a matter of doing what they do best and sticking with it, and playing solid defense.
I agree. I see Mineral Point. Mineral Point they should have beaten Lancaster. They had the ball inside the 5-yard line of Lancaster, and they shot themselves in the foot with a couple penalties. Then they got blown out by Platteville, which a lot better team, bigger team, and they fought with Darlington very close. So I like the chances of Mineral Point. They really, I think, can pull it off.
Yeah, but I like Mineral Point's quarterback, Gibson Spurley. I think that he's had an exceptional year and has been one of the main reasons behind Mineral Point's success, especially down this home stretch. And if you have good quarterback play, which has been kind of the theme for a lot of these teams heading into the postseason, I think Mineral Point definitely has a winnable game. And I think that their game is, these teams in Southwest Wisconsin generally more, a physical, type of brand of football. And that's a brand that can travel anywhere. You can out grit and out push, other people. You don't have to necessarily worry about that. And I think that physical brand, especially this late in the year, goes to an advantage to some of these Southwest Wisconsin teams.
That's something when you talk in terms of that, of the physicality of the teams. Mark Evenstead and I have talked about this over the years. We've seen a lot of teams from other areas around the state, and traveling for some non-conference games or playoff games or whatever. But as a rule, no one is as physical top to bottom as everyone seems to be in this area. Darlington is very physical. But you know what? You take a look at some teams that are not in the playoff. Let's pick on Benton, Scales, Mound, Schulzberg. They're a very physical team. Unfortunately for them, they couldn't put enough wins together. But I think we can go with that say that about a lot of the teams in this area. They're extremely physical. Again, we're looking at a good team in Division 7 with Potosi Castle. They're extremely physical. River Ridge, another very physical team. And that's the only thing I'd say the only real strong physical team in the Ridge and Valley is Highland. But they learned that from being a Six Rivers team. They had to, because that's how they survived all those years. So I think that's the other thing to kind of keep in mind is the physicality that will be part of it. And I think Mineral Point will bring that back down to Racine.
Yeah, even if Racine is able to come away with the win, or some of these other teams outside of our area, you may win, but you're going to feel it over the couple days afterwards. So that closes things up for Division 6. We'll round things up with Division 5, touching up on some of the local teams competing there. Prairie du Chien again hosting Clinton. Prairie du Chien a 2 seed, Clinton the 7 seed, and then Broadhead Judah travels to Columbus. I believe that is a 3-6 matchup. And, looking at this Division 5 bracket, Scott, I mean, one of the things I thought it was interesting was that Prairie du Chien is a 2 seed. Aquinas is a 1 seed, even though Prairie du Chien beat Aquinas.
Yeah.
And I think the conference records certainly had a lot to do with the seeding on that part. But what I found to be really interesting is that Columbus being a 3 seed after winning the Division 4 state title last year, and I saw a sports report covering Columbus after the brackets came out. Columbus is not happy about where they're at, and they're using that as motivation heading into this. And I believe it would likely be Columbus and Prairie du Chien heading to a collision course to face each other in the level 2 playoff. I think that falls into one of those what feels like a crime but isn't category, having those two match up potentially in a level 2 playoff. But Scott, your thoughts on the matchups for Prairie du Chien and Broadhead Judah in level 1?
Well, I give PDC the heads up on the win there. I think they're much better, more physical than Clinton. Broadhead Judah and Columbus could be an interesting game. It just depends on which Broadhead team is going to show up. Lately, they kind of been Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Columbus case, they lost to Lodi. So it's a situation of, you're thinking about, okay, Prairie du Chien got 2nd seed, Aquinas got 1, but Prairie beat Aquinas. That's the strength of schedule. Strength
Right.
might have gave them that extra boost into the playoffs. So, I think when it all comes down to it, it's going to be Prairie du Chien and Columbus will have to travel to Prairie du Chien.
This Prairie du Chien Clinton game, it's going to, I don't know, it's going to be a fast game, I think. Everybody here knows the Prairie du Chien running game, and Blake Peary, Prairie du Chien runs 75% of the time. I looked at Clinton. I saw a little tape on them. Their quarterbacks only have 2 touchdown passes and only average 44 passing yards per game. But their quarterback, Jacob Schoonover, has rushed for over 1,000 yards. And for the season, their team has only thrown 66 passes, and they've rushed 450 times. That's 87% of the time they run, and he runs 50% of those 87% of the time, whatever that makes that out to be. So it's about stopping the quarterback for Prairie. Columbus is very dangerous. I think Columbus will be very dangerous for Prairie du Chien. Their quarterback, Peyton Powers, 17 touchdowns, almost 1,000 yards. He's also rushed for almost 300 yards, so he's another dual threat kid. And they have a running back, Colton Burrell, over 1,600 yards, 26 touchdowns, and they average 255 rushing yards per game. So Columbus seems to be that kind of that balanced team with a good quarterback, but a strong rushing game. We'll have to see what the weather is like that next week, but the winner is going to be somebody who can run the football. And Prairie du Chien has had trouble passing, but sometimes their running game is so good they don't have to pass. But I always argue the higher you go, boy, it sure is nice to have that pass in your back pocket, just if nothing else to loosen up the defense. But it's going to be exciting here in the next couple of weeks.
Well, I can tell you exactly who's going to win the Columbus Broadhead Judah game. The Cardinals, of course.
Yes, definitely.
There it is. Yeah,
I would agree with that. Yep.
You must be a newspaper man.
All kidding aside, Broadhead Judah is kind of limping into the playoffs, and I'm not quite clear why, but they've lost their last 2 games, haven't looked good. They haven't played as well as they have at the start of the season, certainly. And it is possible that it could be that they have just gotten worn down because Broadhead Judah is not as deep a team as they were last year. That's been pretty clear all year. When they lost Blake Matthias for as long as they did, they really suffered with that. And they just don't have the playmakers that they've had in previous years. The running backs for that team do all of the work. They are not just the runners, but they're also the pass receivers. So it could be that with a smaller, with fewer people contributing, just because it's a smaller team, that they've gotten worn down. But I guess we'll see what happens. They have a real tall task, obviously, against Columbus.
Yeah, when I talked with Coach Matthias before the Lancaster game, he was optimistic that his team was going to be healthier heading into the postseason because Blake Matthias had just come back. I believe that was his first game back, was the Lancaster game, coming off that injury. So I do think that Broadhead Judah thought that they were going to be in a much better spot health-wise heading into the postseason. It's just unfortunate for them. They get one of the powerhouse teams, not just in Division 5, but in the state. They're a legitimate contender. And then a note for Columbus, you had mentioned, Tom, Colton Brunell. He's looking to break the all-time rushing record this coming week as well. He needs 182 yards to surpass that, and he's been averaging 181 yards per game. So I think there's a bit of motivation for Columbus to make sure that he gets his and sends Columbus into level 2 on a high note. So before we go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think they would have really liked to have been the number 5 seed instead, because that would have been a little bit better for them going up against number 4 Westby than number 3 Columbus.
Yeah, agreed. Well, that will close things up on the preview portion of the high school sports roundup for high school football. Any final thoughts, gentlemen, about what we will anticipate seeing in level 1? Any particular storylines or anything that stand out to you that you're going to have your eye on with our local teams competing this week? I'll go with our Platteville Truthers, Steve Prestigard, first.
Well, the first thing is, will Platteville keep doing what they've been doing well, as a team that is trying to go into uncharted territory in the sense of winning a playoff game, which they haven't done in 6 years. The other thing, just in a general sense, is teams that didn't really like how their seasons went, and in a few cases didn't like how their seeding went. Well, there's one place to answer that, and that is by how you play. And conversely, the computer doesn't always get it right. And there's, there might be some teams who, for whatever reason, they get a high seed, but they're kind of limping into the postseason. I think the great thing about the playoffs is that it's one and done for everybody. Anybody loses and you don't get another shot at it. So particularly for all the seniors out there who have played football for 4 years, they go out on the field knowing full well this might be the last time they ever go out on the field. And that tends to focus the mind, I think. And that's what makes the playoffs always very interesting to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom, your thoughts?
Well, Steve kind of stole my thunder. That was going to be my message. Friday night about 10 o'clock, half the teams that in our area are going to have their season end. And across the state, half the teams that are left in the playoffs are going to have their season end. And I would just tell all the young men out there competing that, give it your all, enjoy it. It's the best time of your life. And once it's over, it is over and you cannot go back. And, leave, have no regrets and leave everything on the field and have a great time because it's supposed to be fun and this stuff is all for you. So good luck to everybody.
All right, Scott, your thoughts?
Well, between Steve and Tom, they really said pretty much. But, the thing is, it's a new season.
Mm-hmm.
And a new season means new life. And I've seen teams who came in with low seeds end up at Camp Randall. So it's a team that's going to get hot and plays that way through the whole playoffs. Those are some of the teams you might want to watch, I still think Ridge will win the game, but who knows? Highland could get hot and knock them off. So those are the kind of things I'm looking forward to, just to see which teams are going to come out and play like they have been playing or saying, oh, the season's done. Well, we can't beat this team next week, so they kind of tank it. So that's kind of how I look at it. But it is the fun part of the season.
Yep, agreed. And we'll close things out with Wally Troughton's thoughts heading into level 1.
Playoffs are a fun time of the year. And in some ways, I always thought the playoffs were actually as much fun, if not more fun, than the regular season. And some of it was the idea of the one and done. I mean, some of it was the idea of the urgency, that it's now, you got to do it or else. And seniors have to keep that in mind, like you guys had said. The seniors have to have that in the forefront. You have to do your very, very best, maybe the best games you played all year. We don't always talk about the underclassmen in these situations and kind of for them to look at it. If you're from a team that didn't make the playoffs, or if you're from a team that, you get a tough seed right away and you get knocked off right away, you're unable to win, what does it take to get back there? What does it take you as an individual to do to help put yourself in position to help your team to be a playoff team and to be a playoff winner? What does it take? And it takes a lot of work. It takes some mental stuff as well as physical. Keep that in mind as you go through this game. Pay attention to what's going on and give yourself the experience. If you're on a playoff team, you give yourself the experience so that as you get and you strive for that chance to do it again, you'll know what to expect. You'll know what it takes and that you've gone through to get yourself to that point again. I think in a lot of ways it's easier for a player to do that than a coach. Coaches, it's really, really hard to go back. If you won a state championship, what do you want to do the next year, if at all possible? You want to win it again. But you think of all the people that win it once and never get another chance.
Mm-hmm.
That has nothing to do with coaching ability. It's a combination of so many different things. And sometimes you try too hard. But as far as players, you can't try too hard. There's nothing you can do that will say you tried too hard. Enjoy the experience. The cool thing about to get to play against some people maybe you've never played against before. And say, I can show them. I can show them that I can do this. Go for it and have fun. Enjoy the experience.
Yep, and I can speak for all of us. We are going to enjoy the experience watching the postseason play out. Again, our matchups on Friday night on Queen Bee Radio, Jefferson at Platteville on Extreme 107.1, Cambridge at Lancaster on 97.7 Country WGLR and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Cuba City goes to Kenosha St. Joseph's on Super Hits 106, and Highland at River Ridge on ESPN Radio AM 1590 WPVL and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Thank you to Tom, Scott, Wally, and the Platteville Truther, Steve Prestegard, for joining us on our football preview edition of the High School Sports Roundup. We'll look forward to talking about the Level 1 results next week and preview what's going to happen in the Level 2 playoffs next week. We'll have another edition of the High School Sports Roundup on Thursday next week. We look forward to chatting about you then. This has been the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup on YouTube and SoundCloud.